Y'all hear about this Avery Woods story? First things first. Do you know? I'm not trying to be rude, because the whole point of this video is how we should respond amongst unbelievers when they make claims, specifically when they make blasphemous claims. And this is a very interesting story. Now, I don't know if you know who Avery Woods is. I didn't know who she was. Apparently very popular on social media. She has a podcast. It looks like she's trying to do the whole like call her daddy thing. You know, the call her daddy podcast, how they get on the podcast and like she call her daddy. She really blew up because they would talk about like sex, and they would be, you know, she would talk about all the different dudes that she slept with, and then she got like $20 million from Spotify. I don't know. Crazy. The world is insane, right? You talk about how many bodies you get, and then you get, you know, $20 million from Spotify because of the bodies that, you know what I'm saying? It make no sense, but it looked like she on that same like path. They're trying to prop her up to be this comedian and have this podcast and whatnot. And it looks like a pretty successful podcast, but she had a show recently, or she had a podcast recently where she was interviewing this guy. And they started talking about Jesus. And now this clip, mind you, this clip that I'm about to show you, from my knowledge, it has been taken out of the podcast. But they're talking about Jesus, and she says that all her haters are Christians. And then she says some very wild stuff. I'm almost hesitant to play this, and this is your disclaimer right now, that if you have children, this ain't the story for them to listen to. Come back in like 5 minutes. The kids can come back in like 5 minutes. This ain't the one to listen to. All right? I'm just going to say that up front. But I want to play this clip so you can see what she said. And then she apologized. And then I want to have a conversation furthermore about this whole topic. All right? So let's start here.
I finally have the actual clip of what Avery Woods said about Jesus, and we're going to play it. I want you to watch Harry's body language and face and how he reacts to what she's saying. And
so Harry is the dude. So Harry Jowsey, he's like some like reality TV star. If you know Bryce, what's his name? Do you know the Christian dude, Bryce? Very popular Christian dude, Bryce Crawford. Bryce Crawford just interviewed him, Harry Jowsey. But he was just a guest on the show, all right?
Then I'm also going to play something I found on his TikTok that shows me that he was definitely uncomfortable with what she said. Shout out to Haley. She's the one that I got the clip from. I will leave her page in my comments.
It's always the really Christian men. Isn't that so funny?
And that's why I'm not even Christian.
Same, never been religious, but all my haters have like blessed mama 4 in their bio, and they're like, you're a fat, ugly mom. You're a fucking whore. Your kids are like just fucking bullshit. And I'm like, but then in your bio, it's like Psalms 369, blessed mommy of 4.
Yeah, like Jesus is gonna spank you, lady, if you keep it up.
Yeah, literally, he's gonna bend you over and fuck your ass. Jesus is gonna go poo pirate on your ass if you keep up this bullshit.
And I hope he does. Jesus.
They deserve it with no lube.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Anyway.
He looks so uncomfortable towards.
So that's what she said, right? Why your mind even thinks to go there is beyond me. I have no idea. That part has since been removed from the podcast. She posted this apology video, and she's very popular in her own sphere. Her apology video alone has 200,000 likes. All right. She posted this apology video. A lot of people were still upset with her even after the apology video, but let's listen to the apology video.
All right, I just woke up. I didn't want any more time to pass before I sat down and talked about this. I don't usually do videos like this or address whatever hate is going on in my direction, but this is one of those things where I never ever want to offend people and their beliefs, and so I'm just gonna talk to you. I just turned my camera on. First of all, I just want to say my podcast is a comedy podcast, and there are jokes that
she said she said her podcast is a comedy podcast. I'm trying to be the example. So let me not say what I was going to say. Her podcast is a comedy podcast. Here's a clip from the podcast.
What's your type? What's your 10 out of 10?
I think it's an energy thing, which is kind of crazy.
I don't believe that for a second.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not a chance.
Absolutely.
You're not having sex with a 2 out of 10 with a 10 out of 10 personality.
I've done it.
Really?
And it's way more fun.
Because you vibe.
Because they appreciate it.
Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
But I do need a description. I'm hoping it's basically me.
It is.
What's
I'm gonna be in trouble. Sorry, husband.
No,
but, like,
he's fine.
he's the best.
Baby,
I love
it's
him.
okay. Love you.
He's the best. No,
yeah, he is the best.
So that's a clip from her podcast. This is a married woman. And this is the insanity of the internet. This is the insanity of our culture. This is the insanity of entertainment right now, especially on the internet. This is a married woman. This is supposed to be a comedy podcast. She's asking, what is your type? And then she says, I hope it's me. Mind you, this is a married woman. Comedy or not, I don't think it's funny to humiliate your spouse on social media in front of millions of people just for a laugh. That is not a proper display of love, especially in the confines of a marriage. It's very strange behavior. But anyway, let's go back to the apology.
I should not make that cross lines, and I made a joke that crossed a line, and I'm so sorry. I have been very, very open about religion in general. You know, David's father was a pastor, and we've talked very openly on my podcast multiple times about our beliefs and why we believe those things. But I never, ever want to bash religion, bash someone's beliefs. We have so many people in our lives that are religious people and faithful people, and I 100% support.
But here's the thing, though. I'm just asking a question. I don't know if it sounds like her father-in-law is a pastor. She said that they have so many people in their life that are religious people, that are faithful people. Had you not have gotten backlash for this joke, would you have made this apology video? That's just what I just simple. Just simple. If everybody thought that the joke was funny and everybody laughed at the joke and everybody just kept it pushing, would you have made this apology video? I don't think so. And honestly, it saddens my heart that she feels comfortable to make jokes like that, knowing that she has people in her life that are faithful Christians, knowing that potentially they would be offended by that joke, but you still made that joke. And I think it speaks to the greater misconception and the lack of proper perception that the majority of the world has of Jesus Christ. which we're going to get into in a second. All right?
Them and love them no matter what. There are certain jokes that I should not make, and I regret that wholeheartedly. First of all, fuck, I need media training. I don't even know what I'm doing right now. I'm just like looking out the window because I just feel awful. I also just want to say, the episode that I did with Harry was scripted. These were questions that were, written by producers, and I probably should have spoken up and maybe dimmed it down a bit, and I chose not to. This is stuff that I have spoken very, very openly about on my social media for years. If you followed me for any sort of
Okay, I don't really need too much more of the apology. I understand why Christians are her biggest haters. I understand it. I get it. I understand it. I'm not saying it's right, but I understand it. I want to show you something here. I want to show you something real quick. So you know how I said people have a misconception of who Jesus is? I think even some Christians have a misperception of who Jesus is. Do you remember in Luke 22? Luke 22. Luke 22:44. It says, "And being in anguish, Jesus, he prayed more fervently, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground." Jesus was praying, right? Under an immense amount of stress in this moment. And he literally starts sweating blood. Now, this is not an exaggeration. This is literally a medical condition that has been proven. It's called hematidrosis. It's a rare condition that causes people to sweat blood. And essentially what happens is the blood vessels around and the blood vessels that feed your sweat glands, they break. And you start to literally sweat blood. Right? You understand, before Jesus was taken to the cross, he was beaten with metal balls that were woven into these leather strands. So the Romans were experts at torture. They had this whip. Have you seen this image before? Have you seen this picture before? Of this dude right here? Have you seen this image? You've probably seen this image, right? This is an image of a slave who was whipped, right? With this like flog-like device. So imagine this, but 1,000,000 times worse for Jesus, if not more. But this whip that they used, it had 12 strands of leather. There was metal balls that were woven into the leather. And at the end of each strand, At the end of each strand, there was broken pieces of glass, nails, bones, all designed to rip your flesh. So they would literally, it would go into your flesh, and it's designed to rip out your flesh. So you could imagine the more that Jesus is being beat over and over and over and over again, the flesh is being torn away. At a certain point, there's no flesh. It's just organs. So they're whipping him, and the organs and the muscles are being torn away and ripped away from his body. You know what they would call this? They would call this the half death. They would call this type of beating that Jesus endured for us. They would call it the half death, because half the men who received it died from it, but not Jesus. He didn't die from it. This is before the cross. Guys, this is before the cross. Listen, this is Isaiah. This is in the Old Testament. This is a prophecy in the Old Testament. This is Isaiah 52. This is a prophecy of Jesus. It says, "Behold, my servant shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up, and shall be exalted. As many were astonished at you." In his appearance, speaking of Jesus, in his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance. His appearance was so marred beyond human semblance. What does marred mean? Spoiled, ruined, impaired, disfigured. Jesus's appearance was so disfigured that it was beyond anything that resembled a human. And this is before the cross. This is before the cross. This is before the cross. He is being beat so bad that he doesn't even look like a human. This is before the cross. Have you guys seen Passion of the Christ? Have you seen the movie Passion of the Christ? Have you seen that scene when he was getting beat before the cross? That was an extremely less severe version of what really happened. I'm sure Jesus probably would have preferred that version of it, because even that version, that depiction, was less severe than what really happened. He did not even look human. And then he carried his own cross. After that happened, he carried his own cross. Imagine for a second, Jesus, who had just gotten done literally getting his organs physically torn out of his body. Oh, by the way, that crown of thorns that all these celebrities like to mock, that crown of thorns, do you know in some cases, that crown of thorns that he wore, in some cases, those thorns were up to 3 inches long, and they beat it into his skull. They beat 3-inch long thorns into his skull. This is before the cross. And then after they beat it into his skull, they battered his face. This is before the cross. He did not even look like a human. And then he had to carry his cross. Could you imagine Jesus carrying his cross, resembling something that is not even human, and walking his cross up that mountain to be crucified? Why am I saying this? Because I think people have a misconception. They don't have the proper perception of Jesus Christ. Remember what I said. Remember what I said earlier. Remember what I said earlier. Remember what I said earlier. Remember what I said. Revelation 13. And all who dwell on the earth will worship it. Talking about this beast, right? I'm just skipping because we just read this. But all who dwell on the earth are going to worship the beast during this time. Everyone whose name has not been written before the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain. So before the foundation of the world, Jesus knew that he was going to endure all of that for wicked people who would blaspheme his name, who would mock him, who would disobey, who would worship the things of this world, who would worship crystals in the universe, in astrology, but yet he died for those same individuals so that they could have the opportunity to have life, eternal life, through his blood and through his sacrifice. This is the Jesus that you're speaking of. This is the Jesus who you're making fun of. This is the Jesus who you're joking about and saying that he's going to bend somebody over in judgment and literally sexually assault them in judgment. This is the same very Jesus that you're speaking of. Now, here's the thing. From a Christian standpoint, we have to understand that we have to understand 2 Corinthians 5, verse 17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation. That is, in Christ, God was reconciling the world to himself, not counting their trespasses against them, and entrusting to us the message of reconciliation. Therefore, and this is a challenge for me as well, because I'm speaking to the Christians I'm speaking to the Christians who she was talking to, the Christians who were in her DMs, the Christians who were talking about, you're this and that, you're fat, you're this and that, but they had, a Bible verse in their description. I'm speaking to those individuals who would consider themselves to be believers. Therefore, we are ambassadors for Christ. Verse 20. God making his appeal through us. God making his appeal through us. Through us. God is making his appeal through us. We are ambassadors for Christ. And I understand, because when I watched that video, I wasn't surprised. I was upset. And I wanted to say a lot more. But at the end of the day, this was already known to God before he even did what he did on the cross. This was already known to God before he even endured the half death before the cross that we just talked about. This type of activity and this type of behavior was already known, and he still chose to die for us. Because ultimately, that nature that you see in her, we also take part in that nature. And I would just pray, and I would urge people, even myself, to, in these type of situations, lead with the gospel. Use this as an example to show people how wicked they actually are. You're making these crude types of jokes about Jesus. Let me show you what he actually did for you. Let me show you who Jesus actually is. Let me show you what true love actually looks like. Let me show you what sacrifice actually looks like. Let me show you how wicked you actually are, in the fact that you would even conjure up in your imagination to make that type of joke. Now, let me tell you the gospel, because you so obviously and clearly need it, as we all need the gospel, as we all need forgiveness. And that's just something that I'm trying to work on personally myself. Because it is honestly very easy for me to see stories like this and just go completely crazy, which I'm very much holding back the desire in my flesh to just want to go crazy and want to turn up and want to crash out. Because let's be honest, sometimes it's fun to have a little crash out, especially on stream. Sometimes it's fun to crash out a little bit on stream, right? And I'm really fighting the urge to crash. Even right now, I'm kind of feeling like if I really just crashed out, I could probably crash out for a good 3 minutes and y'all would forgive me. But I'm trying to be better. And I think we all have to take this message as being ambassadors for Christ very seriously. Because it is God making his appeal through us. But a crash out would be so satisfying right now. That's what I need. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not going to do it. I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna give into it.